Burkina Faso has struck a historic $8 billion deal with Turkey to export sesame and groundnuts, marking a new era for the nation's agriculture. Championed by President Ibrahim Traoré, the
Picture this, a dusty field in Burkina Faso at dawn, where workers pick tiny, golden sesame seeds. Now, imagine those seeds once overlooked becoming the backbone of an $8 billion deal with Turkey overnight. That's right, one handshake, and a few humble plants turned into the biggest agricultural trade pact in Burkina Faso's history. But what's the real story behind those seeds? How did a country known for its landlocked struggles suddenly become Turkey's go-to for sesame and groundnut? And why does this deal matter not just to Burkina Faso, but to global food chains? We're about to reveal how this unexpected pact could reshape lives' economies. And maybe even the way the world thinks about what's growing in that golden soil, and we'll circle back to what happens when those seeds arrive at Turkey's tables. Burkina Faso's history with sesame and groundnut, until now, has largely been about feeding villages rather than forging global pacts. Smallholders worked by hand, children helping under hot sun, nutrient-rich but low value. Then Ibrahim, recently rising to power, saw more than a crop. He saw a ticket to reshape Burkina's economy. Suddenly, programs sprouted training farmers to increase yield, improving storage, upgrading roads. These were quiet moves but powerful. Within 2 seasons, production surged. Then, made calls, flew to Ankara, and sat across from Turkish ministers who needed steady, high-quality supply. That's how humble sesame and groundnut moved from subsistence plots to the world stage. But the story isn't over. What really pushed Turkey over the edge? That comes next. Turkey, with its booming food processing and snack industries, was hungry literally for reliable sources of sesame and groundnut. Domestic shortages and global price swings were hurting their bakers, confectioners, and exporters. Enter Burkina Faso, with fair weather harvests and now rising output. The $8 billion deal guarantees Turkey a long-term supply. That's a lifeline for businesses investing billions in food production. Plus, Turkey is playing the diversification game. Relying too much on one supplier is risky. With this pact, they hedge against global shocks, and for Turkey, the cost savings and supply security are like planting their own future but from African gardens. But Turkey didn't just want quantity. Quality mattered. That's where Burkina's small-scale farmers, trained under ease initiatives, delivered top-tier sesame and groundnuts. Yet not everything ran smoothly, and there's one twist you won't expect, which we'll uncover in the next section. Getting crops from remote Burkina Faso fields to Turkey isn't simple. Roads that wash away in the rains, lack of rail lines, wild weather delays. Traders used to lose loads or sell under big discounts just to recoup costs. But under the deal, EA's government invested in infrastructure, paved rural roads, shared storage centers, a new rail corridor under construction. They even partnered with logistics firms from Turkey to speed exports. Now trucks roll straight from fields to ports, no more waiting weeks in dusty villages. And here's the kicker, a pilot project used refrigerated shipping containers to preserve freshness. Sesame and groundnut oils are delicate, and freshness equals premium prices. This innovation pushed Burkina's product quality to new heights, and Turkey noticed. But investments like these don't come cheap, and there's growing scrutiny from local communities. What's the human story behind the pipeline? That's up next. Behind every sack of sesame or groundnut is a farmer, sometimes a family of 4 stirring inside a small homestead. Meet Amina, who started growing groundnuts alongside her grandmother. From earning pennies, she now sells at higher market rates through cooperatives formed under the deals programs. Her kids get school meals. Her village got a well, but change isn't always easy. Some older farmers resent the pressure to meet export-grade quotas. They see outsiders telling them to harvest earlier, change planting methods. Some wonder, is the money trickling down fairly? Protests have been small, but voices are starting to ask, are we part of this golden harvest or just harvesting for someone else? And as voices rise, we're about to explore how Burkina's leadership is trying to balance progress and fairness, and what is at stake if they misstep. Government faces a tightrope: push growth fast, but keep promises to the people. They instituted profit sharing within cooperatives, funding health clinics, small schools, solar panels. These measures keep farmers invested and villages improving, yet critics warn of future exploitation. If Turkey's demand grows even more, and Burkina expands exports, will land get consolidated into big farms, pushing out smallholders? Says no, but that vision depends on continued oversight, transparency, and checks. So what's the plan? A mixed model, large-scale infrastructure investment, combined with regulated smallholder inclusion and NGO partnerships to monitor fairness. It's slippery, though. Will that hold? That leads us into the final twist. The $8 billion deal is just the beginning. Burkina and Turkey are already discussing adding value, setting up Turkish-backed processing plants in Burkina, turning raw sesame into tahini, groundnut into oil before export. That means more jobs, more revenue, and more local baking of prosperity. Global players watch 2 other countries could replicate this model or leapfrog ahead. For West Africa, this may set a blueprint for agricultural diplomacy, but it's fragile. Price volatility, climate threats, political instability all could derail progress. Yet, if EA's vision holds and farmers thrive, this golden harvest might bloom into something bigger, a new era where African commodities aren't just raw inputs, they raise central to global food systems. At the same time, the innovations and partnerships may spread beyond agriculture to textiles, minerals, even digital exports. But that's a conversation for another day. From dawn-lit fields and seed-picking families in Burkina Faso to boardrooms in Ankara, we've traveled the story of how sesame and groundnuts, once simple village crops, became the centerpiece of an $8 billion pact. We saw how leadership, infrastructure, and innovation converged to build a bridge between 2 nations. We met the women and men whose lives shifted with this golden harvest, and we felt the tension between growth and fairness. Now, as sacks of sesame roll toward Turkey's food factories, it's not just trade, it's transformation. The dream of local prosperity, if nurtured right, can bloom. And yet, the path is narrow. Fairness must walk hand in hand with progress. But here's the final thought. Maybe this deal is more than numbers. Maybe it is a fresh note. In a bigger song, a song about how global trade can uplift small people, not just global giants. And in that sense, this golden harvest might just be the root note for something much sweeter to come.